Hi there, welcome to your Love Malbec tasting kit from Smashed Grapes. Coming up, you'll see our 6 drink-along videos with a little bit more info on all the wines in your kit. This is Mont Malbec from the Pays d'Oc in France.
That's right, Malbec, the nation's favourite red wine at the moment, and you'd be forgiven for thinking it was out of place anywhere other than Argentina. But France is actually the home of this popular grape variety. It's from Bordeaux originally, blended with Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc to make those famous clarets. It's fallen out of favour in Bordeaux nowadays, but still pops up in the more southern region called Cahors.
Okay, so if I'm a fan of Argentinian Malbec, is Cahors worth looking out for?
Cahors Malbec is actually pretty different. It's not that far from Bordeaux, which is a cooler region than you think for being so south. Thanks to weather brought in from the Atlantic Ocean, this makes the Malbec less fruity and more astringent as it needs the heat to mellow out. For an experience of Malbec you're perhaps more used to, we've picked this wine, grown all the way down right on the border of France and Spain, not far from the Med.
Okay, so it's the heat down in those southern parts of France that create the flavours of Malbec that we love.
That's right, Malbec becomes dark and juicy in the summer sun, but what's most important is the thick skin that it has to protect itself from the heat. Instead of creating bitter tannins, these actually soften in the heat, making Malbec big and powerful, but also super velvety and smooth. That's what makes Malbec so great.
I mean, the Argentinian Malbec often do have a bit of oak in them, right? Sometimes French and American oak, and for really long periods of time, but that's not what we've got here.
No oak on this wine. Argentinian Malbec has developed thicker and thicker skins in South American climate, which means there is a hint of bitterness that can be smoothed out with some oak aging. They're also powerful enough to take on that big vanilla bomb you get from adding American oak. We can think of this French version as a little more subtle, a midweek Malbec that gives you all of the flavour, but you don't need to have it with a 16-ounce T-bone like some of those big RG numbers.
So what am I enjoying this with then?
A great barbecue wine for sure, also goes really well with strong cheeses.
Oof, sold. Cheers. This is Baglio Gibellina Frappato from Sicily in Italy.
Yes, Frappato, a rich and fruity native red grape to Sicily, a country that for decades has been mass-producing grapes for one use only. It's fortified cooking wine, Marsala.
Marsala wine. Never actually drank it. It's one of those things that a Jamie Oliver recipe will tell you need for some sticky ribs or something. I'll buy a bottle from the supermarket, cheap as possible, put a splash in, and then the rest of it just gets dusty at the back of the cupboard for years. Does anyone actually drink that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I never have. Same story here, just for cooking, but I believe people do drink it with like cheese and charcuterie. It was the biggest export of Sicily for quite some time, and the grape growing required to make it was not particularly high quality. The thing about Sicily is it has almost perfect climate for growing wine grapes in vast quantities. Great for mass production, but not always a great standard, as quality grapes actually prefer to struggle a little. It's only recently that the Sicilian government decided to step in and subsidise growers so that they could grow less grapes, focus on quality, and move away from Marsala and into table wine. The result has been some amazing and great value vino. It's one of our favourite regions.
I mean, absolutely, yeah. I'm a big fan of Sicilian reds. This one is excellent. You know, it's packed with fruity flavour, but actually really light and drinkable. That Sicilian climate is also excellent for growing organically, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. Most pesticides in winemaking are used to combat the moulds and mildews brought on by damp weather. Sicily is hot and dry and has an almost 360-degree Mediterranean sea breeze, which literally gives the grapes a good airing and makes sure mould doesn't set in. As a result, a big percentage of Sicilian wine is organic, just because it's easy to do so rather than any effort to get with the times.
I mean, that's great stuff. What can I drink this one with?
Frappato is actually, as you say, very drinkable for such a hot climate wine. The slight sweetness reminds me of a good pizza sauce. For me, it's great with a midweek pizza delivery.
Oof, I'm ordering mine now.
Cheers.
This is Cinco Fincas Malbec from Mendoza in Argentina.
Yes, of course, you can't talk about Malbec without talking Argentina. The two go together like, well, red wine and steak. Malbec did start its life in France, but arguably now Argentina has adopted it as its own. It came over in around 1895, supposedly brought along by an English engineer, Edmund Norton, who recognised the grape's ripening cycle would suit the climate in Argentina. In France, it had actually become increasingly difficult to grow and was pretty unpopular, and often came with really harsh tannins.
Okay, now we talk about tannins quite a bit, don't we? But just as a recap, tannins are that bitter, astringent flavour that you get in red wine. That feeling of your gums kind of drying out, it comes from the skins of the grape, which is also where the red wines get their colour from. So if you want colour in your wine, you're going to get tannins.
That's right, but thicker skins will have more tannins than thinner skins, and grapes that do well in warm countries get nice and ripe and fruity, they need thick skins to do so.
Okay. But if there's one thing I know about Argy Malbec, it's that it's loved for its silky, smooth tannins. You know, it's big and fruity, so where have those thick skin tannins gone?
So one of the things you can do to combat tannins in big red wines is use oak, something that is very popular in Argentina. Not only does it add vanilla and spice flavours to the wine, but smooths out any bitterness from those tannins. They often use a mixture of American and French, and sometimes up to 18 months in the barrels. All this is pretty expensive though, so watch the price tags on those oaked Malbecs.
Okay, but this one has no oak though, so how do they keep it so velvety?
Well, basically expert growing, positioning vines at the right altitude and location so they take as long as possible across the year to ripen. Longer ripening means more time for the tannins in the skins to be kind of melted away by the sun. It takes skill, knowledge and a bit of bravery, because get it wrong and you've got grapes that are out in the rain or even worse, frost.
And I guess we all know it's steak time for this food pairing, right?
Actually no, save your steak for bigger, oakier Malbec or actually a red with less smoothed out tannins. Try this with leaner meats like pork, lamb or lean beef mince.
Who knew?
Cheers.
This is the Palazzo del Mare Rosso from Sicily in Italy.
Yes, Nera d'Avola here, the red Italian grape you've never heard of, as it's only found in its native home on the island of Sicily. Sicily is a fantastic winemaking region deep in the heart of the Mediterranean. This volcanic island is very exposed and super hot, meaning grapes get plenty ripe and full of flavour. Nera d'Avola is a full-bodied red with tons of dark fruit but silky smooth tannins. Excellent for lovers of Argentine Malbec.
I mean, hang on a minute, Sam. If my geography serves me right, Sicily sits about as far south as the top of Africa. You know, that's a stone's throw from Tunisia. Surely that is too hot for decent winemaking.
Very good, Daniel. You're absolutely right, but Sicily has an ace up its sleeve. The same technique used by the Chileans, and that is altitude. These vines will have been planted 200 to 300 metres above sea level, up on Mount Etna. During the day, this doesn't do a lot, but at night, altitude creates what is called in the wine game large diurnal change. That's the technical term for nights that are a lot colder than the days. This pattern of hot in the day and cold at night is perfect for slowing down the ripening process of grapes, which in turn increases the fruity flavour.
Very nice. Is it me though, or does this wine have something spicy or kind of licoricey going on?
You are on fire today, Dan. Yes, a brief spell in French oak for this wine not only adds that spicy flavour, but also smooths out the tannins. That's the bitterness you get from the thick-skinned grapes. Nera d'Avola needs thick skins to cope with the heat. Again, slow ripening can mitigate the bitterness you get as a result, but a bit of oak also helps to create that velvety feeling in the mouth.
Excellent. And, you know, what am I pairing this one with then?
Nera d'Avola is a great wine for red meat, but perhaps a little leaner than a steak. My personal favourite is the humble burger. If you really want to take it up a notch, melted blue cheese in there, game changer.
Oof, very, very good indeed. Cheers. This is Bonfire Hill Extreme Vineyards from the Western Cape in South Africa.
Yes, this is a classic South African red blend from the Western Cape, the southwestern tip of South Africa that sticks out into the Atlantic. And it's the brutal winds of the Atlantic and the searing heat of the region that give this wine the name Extreme Vineyards. It really is an extreme environment to be in, and one that can be excellent for wine growing.
Okay, now I don't know if I've mentioned it once or twice before, but I have actually been to vineyards in South Africa. I've drank plenty of their red wine. And I wouldn't say South Africa has a signature grape, but blending's pretty common. You know, what makes a classic South African red blend?
So most of the red grapes that grow well in this part of the world are actually what we call Rhone varietals, grapes that come from the Côte de Rhône in France. They are Shiraz, Cinsault and Mourvedre. South Africa doesn't exclusively use those, but they come up a lot. In fact, we have Shiraz and Cinsault in this wine, along with a grape that South Africa actually made itself, Pinotage. It was made by crossing Pinot Noir and Cinsault at Stellenbosch University in 1924, and has, I guess, become the signature red grape. Pinotage has lots of great dark fruit flavours, but it in particular sticks out for its chocolatey nature. Something when paired with a decent spell in oak, like this wine has, will be really enjoyed by Malbec lovers out there. It's very similar to those big, rich, oaky Malbecs.
Yeah, I mean, just like an Ardou Malbec, you know, is perfect with some grilled meat off the braai. We know oak can help, but how have they managed in that extreme environment to get such a silky, smooth wine?
Once again, it's all down to slow growing. The Atlantic winds are firstly great for drying out vines to avoid all sorts of mildews and molds that need pesticides, but secondly, cooling the grapes down so that the ripening process is super slow. These grapes are getting all the sunshine of an African climate, but kept nice and cool by the winds. It just gives plenty of time for those bitter tannins to be ironed out into a rich velvet, while still producing rich dark fruit flavour. Perfect.
Oh, and what shall we stick on the braai for this one then?
There's pepper and spice in this wine, so maybe some slow-cooked beef brisket with one of those dry rubs packed full of flavour.
I'm on it.
Cheers.
This is AltaLanded Malbec from Manchuela in Spain.
Yes, AltaLanded, one of our favourite producers in Spain, if not the world. Winemaker Rosalia Molina is producing some of the best organic red wines we have ever tasted. 100% would recommend you go and try the Babal that we stock by these guys, but this Malbec is something else.
And really, it's no surprise they can do big reds down in this part of Spain, is it? Because they've got their own varietals that are pretty beastie as well.
Absolutely, this is not far from Monastrell territory, another favourite of ours that is pretty similar to Malbec. Big, purple fruit flavours, but Monastrell's tannins will have your face off, whereas this Malbec, like the Babal, oh so smooth.
And, you know, we're not only organic at AltaLanded, but we're biodynamic. You know, want to talk us through that mouthful?
Sure, so we all know that organic is all about chemical-free agriculture, growing stuff without sprays and pesticides, etc. Well, biodynamic takes that a little further by growing crops with little to no impact on the surrounding environment, and if anything, embracing the surrounding environment rather than fighting it. So a good example would be indigenous plant life. Normally, a winemaker might rip up the surrounding plant life that might be taking up any nutrients from the soil and competing with the vines. What tends to happen then is that the bugs and berries that lived on that plant life either disappear, leaving the local birds to turn on your grapes, or the bugs themselves turn on your grapes. Biodynamic farmers have found that replanting indigenous plant life encourages bugs and birds to eat elsewhere, and as a result, they don't need pesticides at all.
Okay, I mean, that makes perfect sense, really. And I guess it's that knowledge of the land, how it works, which also produces that incredibly tasty wine. I mean, it's just got so much going on. It's ridiculously drinkable for a 14%er. You know, and that's thanks to those silky smooth tannins. You know, what are we drinking this with?
Yeah, this wine really is packed with flavour, so try some lamb or something like a bit of Thai beef or Cuban pork.
Oof, exotic.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching our drink along videos. We hope you enjoyed the wine. Don't forget to come back and spend your £10 voucher on your favourite.